Her daughter refused to use the school bus and started acting strangely whenever she had to go to school. One day, the mother finally had enough and decided to secretly follow behind, and what she discovered shattered her world completely. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. Olivia Parker stood in her kitchen on a Monday morning preparing breakfast for her daughter. Sunlight streamed through the cream curtains, casting a warm glow over the maple table. The comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of cinnamon toast as she moved efficiently between the toaster and refrigerator. Her morning routine, typically a peaceful start to the day, felt slightly off-kilter as she glanced at her 8-year-old daughter. Lily sat slumped in her chair, her purple backpack on the floor, beside her usually bright eyes downcast. Her cereal bowl remained untouched milk, slowly soaking the colourful loops into a soggy mess. Olivia noticed her small fingers nervously fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater, a habit that had emerged in recent weeks. "Not hungry this morning, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice light despite the concern building inside her. Lily pushed the bowl away with such deliberate slowness that Olivia couldn't ignore the gesture. "I don't want to go to school today," she mumbled, her voice barely audible over the refrigerator's soft hum. Olivia felt a familiar pang of worry. This was becoming a pattern, the reluctance, the lack of appetite, the shadows under her normally bright eyes. Most concerning were the nightmares that had her waking up screaming 3 nights this week, and the bedwetting that had mysteriously returned after being resolved for nearly 2 years. She crouched beside Lily's chair, bringing herself to her eye level, her face etched with motherly concern. The morning light highlighted the worry lines that had begun forming around her eyes. Lines that hadn't been there just a month ago. "Honey, what's wrong?" Olivia asked softly, resting her hand on her small shoulder. "You used to love school. Is someone being mean to you? Are the lessons too hard?" Lily's shoulders rose in a half-hearted shrug as she avoided her gaze, her eyes fixed determinedly on the table. "I just don't feel good," she mumbled, picking at a scratch in the wooden tabletop. Her voice was so quiet Olivia had to lean closer to hear her. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. Olivia sighed and stood up, squeezing Lily's shoulder gently before answering. "Yes, Mum, I know about the PTA meeting tonight," she said, checking her watch. "I'll try to make it, but work has been crazy, and Lily hasn't been feeling well." Her mother's voice came through clearly even from where Lily sat. "You're being too soft on her, Olivia. Children need routine and structure. When you were her age, you never missed a day of school." "We've been through this," Olivia replied, trying to keep the frustration from her voice. "Something's not right. This isn't just about not wanting to go to school." "It's just a phase," her mother insisted. "All children go through it. Remember how she was afraid of the dark last year? You got her that nightlight, and after a week she was fine." The finality in her tone suggested the conversation was over before it had really begun. Olivia pressed her lips together, holding back the words she wanted to say. This felt different. The night fear had made sense. Many children went through that. But this progressive withdrawal, this growing dread of school, it felt wrong, like a warning bell she couldn't silence. Lily excused herself quietly, sliding off her chair with none of her usual morning energy. Olivia watched her shuffle down the hallway toward her bedroom, her small shoulders slumped forward as if carrying an invisible weight. The morning light cast long shadows behind her as she disappeared into her room to get her backpack. And Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that those shadows seemed to cling to her in a way that made her heart ache. She remained in the doorway watching the empty hallway long after Lily had gone, her maternal instincts screaming that something was wrong. She just couldn't identify what it was yet. Olivia walked Lily to the bus stop, their breath forming small clouds in the crisp autumn air. The sky was a clear, brilliant blue that contrasted sharply with the anxiety radiating from her daughter. Other parents and children gathered at the corner, their cheerful morning chatter creating a backdrop that only emphasized Lily's unusual silence. Olivia glanced down, noticing Lily's hands trembling as she clutched her purple lunchbox. Her face was unnaturally pale, making her freckles stand out starkly against her skin. "Are you cold, honey?" she asked, though she knew the autumn morning wasn't chilly enough to cause such trembling. Lily shook her head without looking up, her eyes fixed on the sidewalk. Her knuckles were white around the handle of her lunchbox. The familiar rumble of an approaching engine drew Olivia's attention to the street. The yellow school bus rounded the corner, its bright colour a cheerful contrast to the bare autumn trees lining the street. The hydraulic brakes hissed loudly as the vehicle stopped in front of the waiting families. Olivia felt Lily's entire body stiffen beside her. Her hands suddenly clamped around hers with surprising strength, her palm clammy against her skin. The doors folded open with a mechanical wheeze, revealing Mr. Jenkins, the bus driver, and Ms. Hayes, the bus monitor, who had started the route last month. Jenkins was a thin, elderly man with silver hair who had been driving the route for years. Ms. Hayes sat in the front seat, a clipboard on her lap, her grey hair pulled back in a severe bun, her crisp navy pantsuit giving her an air of authority. "Good morning, boys and girls," Jenkins called out, his voice friendly in the quiet morning. But Olivia felt Lily's grip tighten at the sight of Ms. Hayes, whose thin lips barely moved as she nodded at the children. There was something cold in her pale blue eyes as they swept over the waiting children, something that made Olivia instantly uneasy. A high-pitched sound escaped Lily's throat, startling Olivia. She looked down just as her daughter erupted into tears. Her face reddened instantly, tears streaming down her cheeks as she backed away from the bus door. "I don't want to go. Please, Mum. Please don't make me," Lily begged, her voice cracking with panic. The other parents turned to stare, their conversations halting abruptly. Olivia caught several exchanged glances, some sympathetic, others clearly judgmental. A hot flush of embarrassment crept up her neck as she hurried to Lily's side. Olivia knelt beside Lily, placing her hands gently on her shoulders. "Lily, honey, what's wrong? You need to go to school. All your friends are waiting for you inside." She wiped tears from her cheeks with her thumb, acutely aware of the audience they had attracted. Ms. Hayes stepped down from the bus, her movements stiff and precise. Her expression was sympathetic, almost practiced in its understanding. "This happens sometimes," she said, with easy confidence. "Third-grade anxiety, I think I know just the thing." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out 2 brightly wrapped candies, extending them on her open palm. "Special treats for brave girls who ride my bus, and one for Mum too for being so patient," Hayes said, her voice suddenly honeyed and sweet in a way that seemed at odds with her stern appearance. Lily's crying reduced to hiccuping sobs at the sight of the colourful wrapper. Ms. Hayes's voice shifted to a gentler tone. "I keep these for situations just like this," she explained to Olivia with a conspiratorial wink. "Works every time." Lily hesitated, then slowly reached for the candy, her small fingers carefully avoiding contact with Hayes's hand. Her sobs quieted to occasional hiccups as she stared at the bright wrapper. "And if you get on the bus now," Hayes continued in that same gentle voice, "I'll have another one waiting for you after school. How does that sound, sweetheart?" Olivia watched as Lily's resistance visibly faded, her focus entirely captured by the candy in her hand. The abrupt change in her demeanor was almost disorienting, from terror to tentative acceptance in mere seconds. Relief flooded through Olivia as she accepted the offered candy with a grateful smile. "Thank you, Miss Hayes. That's very kind." "Please call me Elaine," she replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've been working with children for 30 years. I know how to handle the little ones." Something in her tone made Olivia uncomfortable, but she dismissed the feeling, attributing it to gratitude for her intervention in what could have been a much more difficult morning. Lily reluctantly climbed the steps onto the bus, casting one last glance back at Olivia. Her eyes were still red-rimmed, holding a mixture of resignation and something else Olivia couldn't quite identify. Fear? Betrayal? The doors closed with a definitive hiss, and Olivia raised her hand in a reassuring wave as the bus pulled away. She stood watching until the bright yellow vehicle disappeared around the corner, joining the stream of morning traffic. The candy felt strangely heavy in her pocket as an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach, a feeling she tried to dismiss as lingering embarrassment from Lily's public meltdown. Olivia remained rooted to the spot long after the other parents had left, staring down the now empty street as if it might offer answers to the questions swirling in her mind. The weight of the candy in her pocket seemed disproportionate to its actual size, a physical manifestation of her growing discomfort. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't articulate what, even to herself. A movement at the edge of her vision caught her attention. Sarah Miller still stood at the corner, her gaze fixed on the distant point where the bus had disappeared. Unlike the other parents who had quickly dispersed to their daily routines, Sarah seemed suspended in the moment, her expression troubled. Olivia hesitated, then approached the woman cautiously. They had exchanged pleasantries at school events and PTA meetings, but had never really had a substantial conversation. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, startling Sarah out of her reverie. Sarah turned momentarily confused before forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Olivia, just thinking," she said, shifting her weight from one foot to another. She glanced at her watch, an automatic gesture that seemed more habit than necessity. "Your daughter Emily is in Lily's class, right?" Olivia ventured. Sarah nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, they sit at the same table. Mrs. Bennett mentioned they work well together on projects." She glanced at her watch again, clearly preparing to end the conversation. Olivia took a deep breath, deciding to take a chance. "Has Emily been acting differently lately?" she asked, keeping her tone casual, even as her heart beat faster at her own boldness. The effect was immediate. Sarah's forced smile vanished, replaced by an expression of such raw concern that Olivia almost took a step back. "She's been so quiet lately," Sarah admitted, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. "Used to be such a chatterbox. We'd joke that we couldn't get her to stop talking at dinner, but now she barely speaks, just pushes her food around." She sighed heavily, seeming relieved to finally voice her concerns. "And her grades are dropping. Her teacher called me about it yesterday. She's always been good at reading, but now—" She trailed off, shaking her head. Olivia felt a chill despite the morning warmth. The similarities to Lily's behavior were too striking to ignore: the withdrawal, the change in academic performance, the anxiety. "Does she," Olivia hesitated, formulating her next question carefully, "does she ever say she doesn't want to go to school, or have nightmares?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Both, actually. She's been having bad dreams, wakes up crying, and getting her on the bus is becoming a daily battle." She paused, studying Olivia's face. "Why? Is Lily going through something similar?" Olivia nodded slowly. "Very similar. Nightmares, bedwetting, refusing the bus. I thought it was just a phase, but now I'm not so sure." Sarah checked her phone, then looked back at Olivia with new intensity. "Do you know what's strange? It all started when that new bus monitor began. The older woman with the bun." "Ms. Hayes," Olivia supplied, feeling a chill run through her. "Yes, her," Sarah confirmed. "Emily used to love riding the bus. Now she begs me to drive her. But with the new baby and my husband's early shifts, I can't always manage it." They exchanged phone numbers, promising to talk more later that day. As Sarah hurried off to work, Olivia stood alone at the bus stop, her mind racing with possibilities, each more troubling than the last. When she arrived at her office, Olivia found it impossible to concentrate. Images of Lily's frightened face kept intruding on her thoughts. By lunchtime, she had made up her mind. She informed her boss she needed to leave early for a family emergency, promising to make up the hours over the weekend. Instead of going home, Olivia drove to Westfield Elementary, parking her car a block away where it wouldn't be noticed. She arrived just as the afternoon buses were lining up, waiting for the final bell. She slouched in her seat, baseball cap pulled low over her face, feeling both foolish and determined. When the dismissal bell rang, children poured from the building in a colourful stream of backpacks and laughter. Olivia watched as they climbed aboard their assigned buses, her eyes fixed on bus number 17, Lily's bus. Through the large windows, she could see Ms. Hayes standing at the front clipboard, in hand checking off names as children boarded. There was something methodical, almost predatory, in the way she surveyed the children. Even from this distance, Olivia could see how some of the smaller children shrank away from her gaze. When Lily appeared in the doorway, Olivia's heart clenched, Her daughter's shoulders were hunched, her head down as she climbed the steps. She moved like someone much older, weighted down by invisible burdens. Nothing like the bouncy girl who used to skip onto the bus just a few months ago. As the buses began to pull away, Olivia started her car and followed at a careful distance. She stayed several cars behind, keeping the yellow bus in sight without making her presence obvious. The bus made its normal stops, children disembarking in 2s and 3s, parents waiting at designated corners. But after the 5th stop, something strange happened. Instead of continuing along the regular route, the bus turned onto a side street, one that wasn't part of the usual path home. Olivia followed, her confusion growing as the bus made another unexpected turn, and then another. They were now in an older part of town with fewer houses and more industrial buildings. The bus pulled into the parking lot of what appeared to be an abandoned strip mall, the weathered sign advertising businesses long closed. Olivia parked across the street, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through her windshield, she watched as Ms. Hayes stepped from the bus, followed by 4 children, Lily among them. "What on earth?" Olivia whispered to herself, reaching for her phone to record what was happening. The small group disappeared into one of the empty storefronts, a faded sign above the door reading Hayes Educational Consulting in peeling letters. The bus remained in the lot, engine running, with Mr. Jenkins still at the wheel. Olivia waited 5 excruciating minutes before leaving her car. She crossed the street, staying close to the buildings, her mind racing with possibilities. Maybe this was some kind of special tutoring program. But why hadn't she been informed, and why did Lily seem so afraid? Through a grimy window, Olivia could make out shapes moving inside the storefront. She inched closer until she could hear voices, Ms. Hayes's sharp tone cutting through the dusty glass. "Unacceptable, all of you. Absolutely unacceptable," the woman was saying. "Emily, your handwriting is atrocious. Lily, you missed 3 math problems yesterday. And you, Mason, talking during quiet time again?" Olivia peered through a crack in the blinds, her blood turning to ice at what she saw. The 4 children stood in a line, heads bowed, as Ms. Hayes paced before them like a drill sergeant. On a wall behind them was a chart with their names and a series of red marks beside each one. "Do you know what happens to children who don't follow the rules?" Hayes was asking, her voice sickeningly sweet now. "They grow up to be failures. Nobodies. Is that what you want?" The children shook their heads silently. "My own mother understood this," Hayes continued. "When I misbehaved, there were consequences. Real consequences." She stopped in front of Lily. "Your mother is too soft on you. She doesn't understand discipline. That's why I have to teach you, for your own good." Lily's small shoulders shook, but she remained silent, head down. Hayes picked up a ruler from a nearby desk, tapping it against her palm. "Now who remembers what happens when we get red marks?" The children remained silent, but their fear was palpable even through the dirty window. Olivia had seen enough. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. "Emergency services, what's your location?" the dispatcher asked. "The old strip mall on Westfield Road," Olivia said, keeping her voice low. "There's a woman holding children in an abandoned storefront. She's taken them off their school bus and is threatening them. My daughter is one of them." While waiting for the police, Olivia continued recording, focusing on capturing Hayes's voice and the children's frightened responses. When she heard sirens in the distance, she prepared to move. The moment 2 police cars pulled into the lot, Olivia rushed to the door of the storefront, throwing it open with such force that it banged against the wall. "Get away from my daughter," she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. Hayes spun around, the ruler still in her hand, her face contorting with rage, before quickly rearranging into a mask of concern. "Mrs. Parker, what a surprise," she said, with false brightness. "We're just having a special tutoring session. The principal approved it." "No, he didn't," Olivia said, advancing into the room as police officers appeared behind her. "You took these children without permission. You've been terrorizing them." Lily broke from the line, running to her mother with a sob that seemed to contain weeks of pent-up fear and relief. Olivia wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her close as the police officers took control of the situation. "Mom, you came?" Lily whispered, pressing her face against Olivia's shirt. "You believed me." "Of course I did, sweetheart." Olivia said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to understand." The aftermath unfolded quickly. Other parents were called. The principal arrived looking shocked and confused. Hayes was taken away in a police car, protesting that she was helping these children become disciplined and that parents today are too soft. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. Elaine Hayes, a former teacher who had lost her license years ago for excessive discipline, had been systematically targeting vulnerable children. She would identify kids whose parents worked or seemed overwhelmed, taking them for special tutoring that was actually a form of psychological abuse. The school district had failed to conduct a proper background check, relying on her previous experience as a retired teacher. The bus driver claimed he thought the extra stops were authorized, assuming Hayes had permission from both the school and parents. In the weeks that followed, Lily slowly began to heal. The nightmares decreased, her appetite returned. A child psychologist helped her understand that none of what happened was her fault. The other children too began to recover once freed from Hayes's influence. Their shared experience created a bond that helped them heal together, supported by parents who now understood the importance of listening when children try to tell them something is wrong. One evening, as Olivia tucked Lily into bed, her daughter looked up with eyes that seemed older and wiser than her 8 years. "How did you know to follow the bus, Mum?" she asked, her voice small in the quiet room. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. "Because I listened to my heart instead of my head," she answered simply. "Because deep down I knew that when you were trying to tell me something was wrong, even without the words." Lily nodded solemnly. "Ms. Hayes said no one would believe me, that grown-ups always stick together." "She was wrong," Olivia said firmly. "A good parent always listens even when it's hard to hear. I'm just sorry it took me so long to really hear you." She kissed Lily's forehead and turned out the light, leaving the door cracked open, just enough to let the hallway light spill in. As Olivia stood in the hallway watching her daughter drift off to sleep, she made a silent promise, a promise to always trust her instincts where her child was concerned, to never again ignore the subtle signs that something was wrong. Because sometimes the worst dangers aren't the obvious ones. Sometimes they're hidden behind authority and respectability, and sometimes the only defense a child has is a parent willing to listen to what isn't being said. If you were moved by this story, please like and subscribe for more content that reminds us of the power of trusting our instincts and listening to our children. Share with other parents who might need this reminder. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is believe our children even when the world tells us not to.